Is Enzo Maresca quietly building the most adaptable team in Europe? His new tactical structure suggests exactly that, and I'm going to break down why this could bring Chelsea a lot of success next season. To understand how it all works, we need to break down the shape, the roles, and how it all shifts depending on the phase of play. First off, the formation. This varies slightly depending on personnel, but the basic structure of the team is a 2-2-4-2 or sometimes a 3-1-4-2, but I'll be mostly focusing on the former for this video. Next, let's take a look at the roles of each position, and I'm being specific with my wording there because in this new system, a lot of the positions are fixed, whilst the profiles of players that can fit them can vary. Let me give you an example. These positions by the touchline, most people would look at them and call them wingers, but that's not always the case here. Though this can be a winger like Pedro Neto, for example, this has also been the role that Malo Gusto has been operating in most during Chelsea's recent Club World Cup run. Even Cole Palmer, who's now more of a central player, has been coming out to this right hand side and playing in this position at times. In fact, these positions, which I'll just be referring to as the wide players from now on, are one of the core components of the fluidity of the team and why it functions so smoothly. Because one of these two players, depending on which side of the pitch the ball is on, will drop to supplement the defence during spells of no possession, whilst also getting high when we do have the ball and are going forward. They almost act like wingbacks at times, but only when absolutely needed. The best showing of this is in that Club World Cup final with Pedro Neto, a winger, and Malo Gusto, a fullback, both playing and operating in the exact same way, just on different sides of the pitch. Like this moment where Pedro Neto has tracked back into a left back position as Cucurella has inverted into the midfield. Now let's talk about that midfield because these deeper midfield positions are interesting too because they also change personnel a lot, but the job of the players in there remains the same. They are tasked with not only recycling possession and keeping the ball moving during build-up, but also progressing the ball forward to either these advanced midfielders or those wide players we just spoke about. Not only that, but they need to be able to escape pressure when receiving the ball from the back line, beating this first line of the press with either neat one-touch passing that kind of goes through the lines, a little bit of neat dribbling to kind of move around, or a bit of trickery, or just superior positioning that gives them time to get their heads up and play it forward. Depending on which of these we need for any given scenario, we can mix and match players here, not only with starting lineups and substitutions, but during the match with the personnel already on the pitch. For example, as mentioned before, Marc Cucurella sometimes likes to invert into this midfield position, allowing one of the other midfielders in the team to kind of push a bit higher and go advanced. Cucurella's neat first-time passing allows him to get the ball to those advanced midfielders or wide players quickly before either returning to his original position at left back or getting advanced himself and going high. Sometimes we see Malo Gusto or Reece James play here too on the opposite side, or we can play Andre Santos, Enzo a little deeper, Romeo Lavia, Dario Sugo. There are loads of possibilities that can fill in here alongside Moises Caicedo, who almost always starts in the role beside them. One last thing they need to do though, and this ties into that positioning thing that I mentioned earlier, is to be able to drag players out wide with movement, which will then open up avenues so that our centre backs have avenues to kind of play the ball forward through the centre of the pitch. Both centre backs play like pretty standard right and left centre backs respectively. In fact, out of all of the positions in this team, these are the two that are the least likely to change, but they do shift around depending on the positions of our starting fullbacks and the phase of play we are in. Obviously, when one of these two central midfield players, these deeper midfield players, drop deep into either that fullback position or, or the same on the other side, they will kind of shift across and they will move into a 3, which is what I mentioned earlier right at the top of this episode. When we are further up the pitch in the final phase, and this is when we most likely will see this part of this formation with the extra bodies committed forward to leave these two on their own, they will come up to the halfway line. This is in order to add pressure to the opposing team and stop counterattacks should they come, because obviously you can meet them quicker if you're further up the pitch, but as well as kind of compete for long balls as they go over the top, most of which are able to be either shepherded back to the goalkeeper with headers, cleared, or just go over the top to our goalkeeper. And the goalkeeper is an interesting one too, because he almost acts this same way. Obviously, he'll act as a sweeper, he'll come up high to claim things, but similarly to these centre-backs, he'll actually kind of join the back line sometimes when we are a bit deeper, and he can kind of make this a 3 and make it easier for him to then play the ball, you know, through the lines as we create those avenues that I spoke about earlier. They will drop when under sustained bouts of pressure like normal, able to defend the area when other players come back as well, for example, like we spoke about before with these players dropping a bit deeper. However, it's during build-up in the first phase where we see them really shine. Like the deeper midfielders before them, it's their job to not only recycle possession, keep the ball moving quickly in order to open up gaps in the opposition, but then play it forward when the opportunity arises. And this is aided by the movement of the deeper midfielders, like I mentioned before. They will go wide and drag these players out of the centre, which opens up the pathway for a player like, for example, Levi Colwill, who likes to play on this left-hand side, to spear the ball into our strikers, or if the advanced midfielders are dropped a little bit deeper, into these two advanced midfielders instead. The advanced midfielders are the most creative part of our team, often moving into pockets in the inside channels where they can be found in space by the deeper midfielders or the centre-backs, and then progress the ball forward to our strikers or out to these wide areas where these wide players can get onto the ball and then put balls into the box or take on their men. It's their job to provide the attacking cutting edge, as it were. Unlock the defence with an incisive pass, a shot, a neat bit of dribbling or trickery. And we'll talk about these positions and the strikers a bit more in a moment here. But first, a quick reminder that my FPL mini league is now live. If you like FPL and want to get involved and compete for prizes, then make sure you join my community Discord where you can find out all about it. Links for that will be down in the description as always. Now let's talk about the main reason why this new system is so strong. It's all to do with the shapes within the team and the interchanges inside these shapes. As you can see, our team is divided into 3 groups. It's a square at the base and then 2 triangles on either side of the pitch further up. And it's within these 2 triangles where the real magic happens, in my opinion, because it's so versatile and adaptable. If we bring the players in here, and this is just an example of what we saw in the Club World Cup final, we get to see how these positions stay the same whilst the personnel rotates or interchanges between each other. For example, in this left triangle, we often see Marc Cucurella going into this inside 10 position with Enzo, who really should be here, pushing on when he joins the press and going high into one of these top 2 positions. At times in that Club World Cup final, the highest players on the pitch were Enzo and Pedro, and it felt like he was almost playing like a left striker at times. However, we also see Neto rotate into this forward position, with Marc Cucurella going out wide into the left side and Enzo dropping into this midfield role. And again, this works very, very well. Obviously, Neto can use his pace to get forward. Cucurella is very obviously capable on the left-hand side. Enzo can make from deep. It's something that they're all very good at, and again, they can use this as a rotation as well. Sometimes we see Enzo going out wide so he can receive the ball from Colwill, for example, as Neto runs forward, and Cucurella fills into this midfield role so he can occupy this role. Even at times we see the complete opposite of this as well, with Cucurella being the one who runs on high, Neto being the one out wide, and Enzo being here in the middle. There's every single rotation you can think of that involves these 3 positions. They can do perfectly fine. Again, there's another case is obviously with Neto dropping into this midfield role as he kind of receives the ball from Caicedo, for example, and Enzo can stay out wide to support him to get the ball and then play it on to Cucurella, or for example, Enzo can stay high and Cucurella can go wide and he's dropped deep to get the ball here. The interchanges are almost infinite in the way that we can navigate these triangles, and it doesn't just happen on this side either. On the opposite side, it happens as well with these 3, with Palmer, Gusto and Pedro. The same scenario occurs. Again, Gusto is perfectly capable of pushing into a striker's position. We saw this against PSG, him going really, really high and getting into a striker's position. Obviously, Palmer then pulling out wide and Pedro dropping deep. Right, we see that happen, that rotation happen. We've obviously seen Palmer staying on this wide kind of right position, whilst Gusto does the underlap and stays here with Pedro going forward. Palmer, of course, is very capable of playing on the wing, wing himself because he is originally a winger, but he can also push up high and go into this striker position. We've seen him make those runs as Gusto goes wide, and for example, Pedro Neto has dropped deep to collect the ball from our centre backs because he often does this and joins the midfield. He can drop deep, Palmer can fill in his position, and Gusto can stay out wide for support, and the triangle stays the same, just with different people in different positions. Pedro Neto again is a kind of interesting one because he's a striker that again is not a full number 9. He likes to run the channels, so as he runs out wide into this wide position, obviously Palmer can run forward into his position and Gusto can fill into Palmer's position. And again, the triangle's slightly different here, but it's still the same structure. It's just with different people in the different positions. Even though this again is a little bit more advanced, this is kind of what we see all the time. But the real kicker for me is not just the rotations in these two triangles, but the rotations throughout the entire team when these two triangles, for example, intersect and they kind of work in tandem. Again, Joao Pedro, for example, is a player that loves to run the channels, and sometimes, obviously, as he starts in a central position when we're in build-up and a little bit deeper, he will drift to the left-hand side rather than the right-hand side where his natural triangle is, and this will make the entire team kind of change around, and we see something very, very interesting. As he drifts across to this left-hand side, every single one of these positions kind of gets filled one by one, and they kind of, again, we move into the same shape just with different personnel. For example, in this scenario, it would probably be Palmer going higher into his position, James coming into this midfield area, Caicedo would drift across to this side so Cucurella can drop deep, Enzo would then goes into this position, and again, we get the same structure as we have before with these two triangles and the square at the back, but with players in different positions. It's that positional discipline that helps Chelsea keep our shape and not get dragged out of position and leave gaps open for the opposition if we lose the ball. And the great part about this is because everything is position based and it's not personnel based, it's all just everyone has to be in one of these positions at any given time. The players in each of these positions don't really matter in the grand scheme of things. As long as someone is there at all times, the structure stays relatively unchanged, and there's always an option for the man on the ball. And what this allows us to do is pass the ball very swiftly with 1-2 touch passing, because the players already know where someone will be. They don't have to look and get their heads up and kind of always assess where the players are going to be all the time, because they can play instinctively. Even if someone has left a position, for example, Pedro drifting to this left-hand side, they know that someone will have filled into that position and someone will be there at any given time. This is why we play out of pressure so well. It's why we are able to play those transitional kind of passing moves through pressure and kind of quickly get up the other side of the pitch, and why our transitional based passing play is so deadly, because we are able to do it without any hesitation due to the positional structure of the entire team. And not only that, but these constant rotations and movement make it really difficult for opposition players to stay with the man that they're supposed to be marking, as the opposition players would have to run out of their own positions to kind of track people. For example, say this player is supposed to be tracking Palmer, well, Palmer's now up here now, so he's got to drop all the way back. He can't just stay here and mark James because that's not his man. It's supposed to be someone who's advanced to kind of deal with James, for example. And what that does is it makes them have to run out of their own positions to follow their men as we move around, which sacrifices their shape and opens up more gaps for Chelsea to exploit. One of the greatest parts about this new team, though, is just how adaptable it is in terms of profiles. We have the option of being more aggressive, for example, if we decide to play with two pure strikers in those top two positions. We could be more defensive by adding an extra defensive midfielder or a fullback, for example, into the midfield like we do with James. We can work as a passing, possession-based side, but also can function more pragmatically and hit on the counter with passes through pressure or long balls, like we did with Malo Gusto being added into this wide area, so he could be hit by Sanchez long balls like we saw in the PSG game. There are so many versions of this team that can be created, and it's only limited by the available players and the imagination and creativity of the man that is spearheading it all, Enzo Maresca. As the old saying goes, it is not the strongest of the species that survives, nor the most intelligent. It is the one that is the most adaptable to change. Will Chelsea be able to prove those words right? I suppose we'll just have to see how we fare against Bayer Leverkusen when we face them in a couple of days. As always, I'll be doing a live watch along for that match on this channel, so come through so you don't miss that. Please leave a like on the video, it really helps out the channel and me, and for more content like this in the future, don't forget to subscribe as well. Thank you guys so much for watching as ever, and remember, football can be as simple as black and white.
Something ain't right, I'm drowning in the ocean. I'm still alive, but I feel the fall in motion. I lost the fight and now I'm finally floating, but I still try to hide my emotion. Who am I in pieces I've been broken?